Hello and welcome to the People Performance Podcast with me, Tracy Roberts. And today I am joined by a very, very special guest, Lucy Vere. Welcome to the podcast.
Hello, nice to be here. Thank you.
I guess for our lovely viewers and listeners, it'd be good to kind of give a bit of insight as to what it is you do.
Yeah.
And what I guess the kind of stuff we might be talking about today.
Oh, so my role is Group Director for Learning and Organisational Development. And the type of stuff I have in my portfolio is things like leadership development. So that gives you a hint about what we might be talking about today. But I'm also really lucky to have lots of learning and development teams. So I have things like clinical simulation, medical education, the usual gorgeous statutory mandatory training, which I know everybody absolutely adores. And yes, and I'm also lucky to have lots of beautiful learning facilities as well, which I manage. So yeah, I have a brilliant time. And then organisationally, I do support the organisation almost like with internal consultancy around culture and kind of transformation and that type of thing. So yeah, quite a varied role.
So it's just small...
Just tiny, really. Yeah.
And I guess for those watching or listening, to let them know that you are based here in Hull.
I am, yeah. I came here 31 years ago now and I didn't leave. So I came to Hull University in 1993 to study occupational psychology.
Oh, wow.
I did meet my husband, who is from Beverley, which is a local town, and I've been here ever since. So yeah, I think I've been here longer than anywhere else. But I originate from North London. Via Nottingham, and then now I'm here.
Now I'm here. I like
now I'm here.
Accent change.
I've got
slightly.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, depending on where I am. Yeah, I'll be like, all right, me duck. If it's Nottingham, but obviously here it's different, and I've got a ner. Yeah, so I do have that.
So how did you, so obviously coming out of university, was it always something that you wanted to do, to head into public sector, or was it something that just happened by chance?
I think it was a mixture of things. I really realised if I was studying work psychology that I wanted to go into the world of work before I did anything around consultancy. I was considering being a prison psychologist actually for a little while, yeah.
That would be interesting.
But my mum's a nurse. My dad was also a hospital manager in the NHS in a previous life. And I saw the NHS graduate training scheme up, and actually it was pretty much the only thing I applied for. I think I am very public sector orientated. Obviously, I'd seen my mum have a great career, and there's just something about being able to see how you might impact in a different way. I think looked at lots of different jobs, but for me that's been a great motivation, and it's a great community to be part of because there's some pretty cool people and they do some pretty fantastic, amazing things. Pretty much everyone's lives, won't they? Whether it be at the beginning, the end, or if something, if you need something to be looked after, we'll touch on the NHS in, if you live in the UK. So I think it's crazy, really. It's an amazing organisation.
And that's a really good way to look at things. I don't think I've ever really thought of it like that, but that's such a strong purpose.
Yeah.
And I definitely know from, obviously we've been doing work with you guys for so long now that I don't think I ever don't feel that come across from people in the room, even when they've got frustrations or, when things are tricky, your heart goes out because really they just want to do a really great job.
That's right.
And look after the public. And I guess that's maybe where some of the frustration comes in from yourself, really.
Yeah.
People are putting themselves out there on a daily basis and you want to give them great support, but things can often be rocky for people.
That's right.
In the organisation, and you've got to try and provide a bit of stability, a bit of support. And what do you think the biggest frustrations are in the NHS right now?
Oh, it's a difficult one, isn't it? Because obviously we're
get a list out.
Get a list out. Yeah, I can say, how long have you got? I do think it is very frustrating because if you were to walk right now into one of our hospitals, and whether it be Grimsby or Hull or wherever, there'll be some people doing some pretty cool and amazing things. Well, not just pretty cool, very cool, under very difficult circumstances. Sometimes our staff receive abuse. Obviously, recently in Hull, it's been very sad times, after the race riots in August. So our staff, who are black or brown in our organisation or are not white presenting, have had a really difficult 6 months as a result of that. And bear in mind, they're still giving people treatment, they're still moving forward, and they're still being amazing. I think that at the other end, people are just getting on with it. Does that make sense? I know there's lots of headlines and stuff, but regardless of, I'm talking about ambulance waits, corridor waits, which all organisations are facing at the moment, people coming into work and are doing absolutely their best. But then at the other end, we've got people at cutting edge research. We were part of the team that helped find the vaccine for COVID. So it's really easy to get bogged down in the headlines.
Sure.
But actually, we've got people turning up, going to work, and every little part of the team is needed. My son has just become a porter.
Oh, wow.
It's fascinating listening to him, but you can just see how every cog has to work, because if they're not there, the bloods don't get delivered, or the patient doesn't get moved, and they don't get their MRI, as an example, at which point they don't get their decision, at which point they don't get to go home or to get the treatment they need. So, of course, it is absolutely about, our amazing medical staff, surgeons, nurses, physios, all of the different allied health professionals. But I think it's amazing community. Like you can pretty much do any career you want in the NHS, hence me being able to have a career, really. And it is amazing.
A very good career as well. And I think as you've kind of gone through your career at different levels, you'll have seen so many changes.
Oh, totally.
And been through so many, different variations of environment.
Yeah.
And I guess that gives you a little bit more insight to really get to grips with how people do feel in different areas, which probably helps your job a lot, I should imagine.
Definitely. And I think particularly when I'm kind of in my organisational development team head and stuff, I was with some people on Friday doing leadership development, and I had speech and language therapists in there, had a more senior matron, a real wide range of people. So while I'm not out there doing it, I think our teams, we get a unique perspective on how people are feeling. We're kind of a helpful temperature check. So we can probably predict some things that are about to happen. I think one of my passions is that if we looked more at the people metrics and what people are saying, you can probably predict why a process is going wrong or why there's a safety issue. And actually, we know from research that staff survey results, staff engagement scores, all of that type of thing are scarily correlated to whether a department is performing, whether it's coming in on its money or whether it's coming in terms of quality and safety. And we have national case studies for that, and we'll also have our own local case studies as well. In our hospital. So yeah, I think it's a really interesting thing. So yeah, we're very lucky. I get to work with pretty much every level of staff in our organisation, and it's a real privilege.
And I think it's probably worth mentioning as well that not everybody kind of knows all these acronyms and stuff.
Oh,
has the departments and I even struggle sometimes.
Let's do bingo. Let's do acronyms.
Yeah, let's do that.
Yeah.
But even for some organisations, wouldn't necessarily know what OD do.
Yeah,
because not every organisation has that.
No.
So I guess, is there a simple way you can sum up that responsibility?
I sometimes joke that we're like therapists for the organisation, but organisational development essentially is the whole business psychology, occupational psychology movement. We're looking at how do people work, how are people in the world of work, what's the culture like, how is it impacting. So the type of work we do is everything from, say, working with you to have regular leadership development available for people, right through to maybe working with teams who are struggling, and maybe having interpersonal stuff, team dynamic things. So we'll do a range of interventions. So I would say like the organisational development team is a bit like internal consultancy, but except we're in there. And I'm really lucky because the team, I've got a range of people with business psychology backgrounds. I've got previous leaders. So I've got previous charge nurses. We've just employed somebody from the armed forces. So it's a really, but they're all people professionals in terms of understanding people, understanding that business psychology, and that's what's important to me. It has that kind of evidence base behind it. So we're able to either advise the organisation or actually directly provide services for them. So yeah, and that's why we've worked in partnership over the years to do some of that stuff, haven't we, really?
Yeah. And I think it's fair to say that we were saying this before we came on air, is that genuinely our team here at T2 love working with you guys, because we always get such a warm welcome.
Yeah.
The feedback we get is incredible. And I think we always get feedback on both sides that they feel really supported internally, which is lovely to hear, because we don't always hear that in your organisation. But also because we work so closely, I think our messages intertwine so much that actually it's not them and us, it's us coming together to produce stuff. And I think one of the things that's really sticking in my head from the last few weeks is we've been working with some smaller groups in networks, right?
That's right. In our staff networks, that's right. Yeah.
And what was the sort of idea behind that? Because to explain to the people who are kind of listening and watching now, it's groups of networking groups that you've placed together because you like them to form the network, but also learn at the same time? Is that kind of...
It is, but it's also about providing support and representation within the organisation. So we have a variety of different networks. We have ones for our Black, Asian and minority ethnic staff. We have those for our staff with a disability. We have one for staff for the LGBTQIA plus community as well. Because we have to be open and honest, and I'm sure it's the same in every organisation. If you are particularly from maybe, the main three, some protected characteristics, you're going to have some challenges that you wouldn't necessarily face. For instance, I've talked about as a white presenting woman, I can walk through Hull and I will not expect in a white majority any racial abuse. That isn't the case, unfortunately, for some of our, black and brown staff who are facing racism. So actually, these staff networks are a safe space.
Yeah.
It's a way for the organisation to hear what truly their lived experience is. We work very closely with our networks to put stuff in place, to have action plans. Most large organisations, particularly public sector, will be measured on this. So there's something called the Workforce Race Equality Standard. There's the Workforce Disability Equality Standards. There's gender pay gap. So we are, we are statutorily required to report on this, and we have to show that we're making improvements. But my perspective is, and what I want to do with the teams is, we shouldn't be doing it because we have to. We have to do it because it's the right thing to do. And not only that, again, I come back to the research. The research shows that if you have a diverse organisation, you're going to get better results. It's as simple as that. I think the other thing we're trying to do is really widen participation, because if you think about North Lincolnshire, parts of that, also Hull, East Riding, there are real areas of deprivation where kids aren't necessarily going, I know what, I'll join the NHS. So one of our things is to really widen participation in, we work hard with schools, and we've had some real successes recently, going out, having conversations, saying, you don't have to be a doctor, so you don't need, 4 A stars at A level to get into medical school. Struggled with your maths and English? Don't worry, we got you. Come into our organisation, we'll help you with that. And, we've got people who've started, in kind of administrative roles, have done apprenticeships with us. And actually some have gone on to become qualified nurses through our apprenticeship programmes. And that's what the NHS is about. Do you know what I mean? It's not just about looking after that person right in front of us. We've got a wider community responsibility. And I think for me, it's about, I'll be honest with you, if you are white presenting in a white majority, you have to recognise that you have privilege.
Yeah.
And it's really important that you understand what that is and look at what your allyship is. How are you giving your voice away and not taking it off other people? And it's something that's really, really important, and it's the right thing to do. And so that for me is, staff networks are not just about getting people together, but it is about a safe space, and it's about having a voice heard. I think we do that well sometimes. I think there are things that we're still not getting right, and I'm sure they would absolutely agree with me if they were listening with that. But I think there is a real commitment nationally, but I think particularly within our NHS group to make right on that, and to really get that going and moving.
And we definitely feel like blessed to kind of be part of that. And I guess in terms of what that helps with, like, working with your standard cohort of sort of individual contributors, if you like, feels great, because people come together and learn and kind of share lived experiences in the NHS, but taking them together in that networking group takes that just a stage further, doesn't it? And people can share some of the struggles that's more specific to their characteristics.
Yeah.
But also, I think people just let their guard down just that little bit more.
That's
and as they're going through the learning process, they're putting it in the context of their characteristics.
Yeah.
And I've definitely seen on the cohorts that myself and particularly Bernice have led recently, that definitely feels like a more relaxed space for everybody that's in there. So it's definitely a good way to get, if you want to get to the truth sometimes, I think just creating that environment is a really good thing to do. So, and it's definitely something that we've been recommending to other agencies and places that we're working with, is to maybe think more about that networking idea, because we do tend to find that we can get to the root cause of some of the things that we can take action on, as an example. And I guess within that, so you've got your networking groups, but one of the other big things that you've tackled fairly recently is restructure.
Oh, yes.
So
what do you mean?
just a simple
small thing.
And I guess for a lot of our viewers and listeners, change is ever present in organisational kind of stuff that they're working on. What's been the key to navigating that reasonably well, do you think?
I think one of the things that's happened in the NHS is rather than have mergers, because you need to do all sorts of legal things, you need permission from Parliament and all of that sort of stuff. There's been a lot of work going on across our whole patch, looking at patient pathways and actually what's best for the patient. And I mean, I don't know if people understand how the NHS works, but some hospitals will be super specialist hospitals. Think of your, I suppose, Ormond Street is, Great Ormond Street is the kind of children's specialist hospital, but that works at every level. So Leeds, for instance, but on the North Bank of us where we are, we are a specialist services. I think pretty much the only thing we don't do is really, really complex, surgery and or things like burns. So that would go to like Leeds, or it might go to Sheffield or Nottingham, depending on where you were on our patch. And then on the South Bank, we have what we would call, and within our own services, district general hospital services. So you break your leg, you come into the emergency department. Does that make sense? We sort you out. But if you're going to need cancer treatment, you would probably likely come to a specialist centre to do that. So really what they did was map out all these patient pathways, and the decision was made that it'd be really helpful to move so Hull Royal, Castle Hill, hospital services, and actually put them in a group structure with Northern Lincolnshire and Goole, which is Scunthorpe, Grimsby, and also Goole. And we also have community services there as well.
Of course.
And really all that means is instead of having two sets of executive cabinets, we have one now. So we have one CEO for both organisations. What's really complex about it is the joy of the bureaucracy. Is we're technically still two sovereign organisations. So we have two sets of accounts, two sets of regulators, like the CQC will come in. So that's what we've been navigating. So we're trying to, so we spent the last year looking at group values, what culture do we want to have? And I think that's a really important thing. We're just currently getting group strategy together. But inevitably, I think, what we're doing well is having those conversations and trying to be clear about the direction that we're going in. I think the challenges is that whenever you touch people's stuff, they do not like it. So obviously we've restructured how clinical services work. So you have one specialty that spans both sides of the water. I'm just looking at the Humber at the moment. I think it's a big difference. That makes sense, because people like the way that things have always been. Humans are weird. We don't really like change, do we? Do you know what I mean? We don't really like uncertainty, and that's what this brings, and that's inevitable. So I think really the last kind of, so I'm coming up for a year in my job at the beginning of February, but actually the real restructure didn't really happen until the 1st of April. But actually they've been doing really well. The leadership teams are in place, and you can see that kind of communication and visibility, as always, is the key. So being visible, being clear. What someone said to me last week, to be clear is to be kind, and I think you're not wrong with it. It's really, really, really true. Because even sometimes they're a difficult message to talk about. But my experience of it is on an individual level, people are brilliant. I do not come across pretty much hand on heart anyone who is being difficult. Nobody comes into work to be difficult. Usually when someone's having a challenge, it's because they have a need, and you need to get to what that is. And I think I remember being a coach years ago. I was moaning about something. They didn't do this, they didn't do that. And I was making all these kind of noises. And I remember them saying to me, "Did you make the request?" And I was like, "Oh, no, I didn't." So how would this person know that I was cross with them or they weren't meeting my needs? I hadn't actually expressed what that was. And that's kind of stuck with me. So whenever someone's working with me or chatting to me, I kind of don't say it as overt as this, but are you just offloading or do you need something? Because if you do, I'm more than happy to have that conversation. If you just need an offload, that's absolutely fine. We've all been there.
Oh, yeah.
And we all need to have a...
You need both.
You need both, don't you? Yeah. So I think that for me has been, that's kind of working through. But people are brilliant. The practice on both sides has been amazing. And I think it's, how do we still with pride? And that's certainly what I've been trying to do as I work with my own teams. But I think we'd be naive to think that we don't have niggles, things, and we'll learn and we'll have to adjust and shift and stuff. So, and that's what I've noticed all of our leaders doing in the face of one of the busiest winters. Yeah, delivering targets, so people directorate is slightly different, but if you're an operational manager, operational nurse, some of our directors, it's really, really challenged to be doing all the really amazing engagement and people stuff, but also keeping the wheels on the bus in terms of making sure flows going through the hospital. We're dealing with the demand, and it is unprecedented demand, and it is a real challenge.
So tricky to sort of keep your head up when you're in an operational environment. And I guess that's why sometimes with change, I think I'll really resonate with the clear is kind thing. I think in most organisations, when there's problems with change, it's either not being thought through before it's been communicated, or it's been communicated and we're not quite sure how to land it with different audiences. But I think a lot of the kind of good stuff that comes out of change is just understanding the truth. I think that's the key. And for me, that is just that little piece around clarity and that horizon of transparency and what it looks like in different areas. But then also taking into the equation that you've got this operational environment, and where if you could fully focus on just the change and what's required, that would be great. And you probably get that done and dusted pretty quickly. But if you add into the equation your normal job and all the frustrations and even some of the niggles and the assumptions that people are making sometimes, that just kind of adds months on to that change just plateauing and relaxing. That makes sense. So I think it must be really, really tricky, but it's good to hear that you feel that some of it's coming together now.
Definitely.
We're definitely starting to do some work with the different groups and trying to kind of get them thinking collectively rather than as separate units.
And they've designed that with you, and that's been the one thing that we've had in place from the beginning. You know, we've had conversations with the senior directors, understood what they need. And this is a very OD term. You know, we've co-created a lot. I like that. Co-created a lot of things. Check us out.
It always works better if it was co-created. We know
absolutely.
that.
You know, there are some things that you can take off the menu that you know will be helpful regardless of the situation. But some of the work they're doing with you guys at the moment is stuff that they've asked for and they've wanted. So we've been able to respond to that. And I think that's the thing to do. And it, you know, regardless, people need some space, don't they, in order to be able to explore what it means for them, because there will be the demands, there will be the targets, there will be the things that they're going to get asked to do. That's inevitable. You know, finance and the money is always challenging in the NHS in terms of how do we make sure we deliver services, but still coming on budget. So I think from that point of view, but I think it is a really good thing that we're able to do that and to provide that support. And it's that kind of like, it's the people who make that stuff happen. So you can have as many RAG-rated action plans as you like, but essentially you've got to get the buy-in from the people to make it happen.
And you've got to provide the space and I guess the counsel and the advice to make that happen. And I think in a lot of environments, particularly that we kind of get involved in, that quite often there's the concept of we need these people to work better together. We need people to have better self-awareness, we need people to adjust, we need people to ride the wave of change better. But quite often we don't clear the space for people to go, let's have that discussion, or PS, turn your phone off and go and sit in a room and have some space, take this stuff in, mull it around a bit, do something with it. And quite often that's the tricky bit. You take people out of an organisation for a period of time and the frustration's still building up around what's going on. So I think it's really good that you guys can go, okay, pause. There is a distinct need for you to pause right now and take this time. And I definitely feel that when we get that, I don't know, more relaxed mindset when people walk into to do some cohort work or even some coaching with us, because I know we're doing a lot of coaching with individuals at the moment. I think they feel like, you know, I've earned this space to take that pause. And actually the pause is only going to help me get quicker or, you know, make some marginal gains. So I think that's a phenomenal kind of approach to things, because I don't think everybody has quite the same outlook on, you know, that investment, if you like. And it's not just the investment in finances, the investment in time, isn't it?
That's right. Do you know, I think that you just sort of triggered something off. I do think sometimes it takes a big change to make people connect that maybe they might need that support, and it's okay to ask for it. I think, and I don't know if it's like this in other sectors, but can be very stoic in the NHS. And you know, sometimes engaging in senior leaders, they feel like they have to know everything. There's, you know, and actually you need a bit of curious humility, don't you, sometimes? Do you know what I mean?
Bucket loads,
I mean, flipping heck, I don't know every single job with, you know, I know what all the people in my directorate do, but I can't possibly know the ins and outs of every single job. You have to have trust to allow people to be able to get on with it. And I think that is the big kind of challenge. Then obviously there's the push from the government, there's, you know, regulators, lots of standards to be met all the time. So it's just got loads of different things coming in all different directions. And then we're saying, oh, please make sure that you're nice to your people as well. You know, it's, I think it's
a little
just
caveat then.
just a caveat, but you do need to do this in a way that, you know, doesn't kind of, that does gain the buy-in, because my experience of working with teams is they usually have the answers. We always find teams who aren't getting on, they're usually in heated agreement, which is my favourite thing.
I like
Heated agreement. You know, you kind of go round and you're kind of talking about, we're doing something at the moment called restorative practice. We're working,
Oh, love that.
really love a bit of restorative practice. And we did that because we were kind of, if you work with a team who are coachable, it's fine because they're coachable. So therefore you can pose them really great questions. They've got the bandwidth to be able to explore it, and you can usually get to an outcome that's helpful. Then obviously at the other end, you've got that kind of, when one interpersonal relationship breaks down, we might mediate. There was this kind of white space that we were missing in our team. And so we explored this kind of concept of restorative practice. So we've been using these kind of circle meetings as that. But it's brilliant because what you do is you kind of start off with what's happened. You're only allowed to speak if you're holding the, usually it's a weird little basketball that we've got.
Oh,
that we,
like that.
That's what we found, a squeezy basketball. And what you do is you peel the layers of the onion back. So you kind of talk about what's happening.
Sure.
As a result of that, what you're thinking and feeling. And some people have some thoughts, let me tell you.
Oh, yeah.
And then from what are those thoughts and feelings, what are the needs then? So if you're having these thoughts and feelings, it's coming because you have a need or a request from something.
Yeah.
And then what we allow that team to do is to turn those needs into actions. So actually what goes from being sometimes quite, I suppose, difficult conversations allows people, because I think that if you don't get people to understand what it is that they need or want, they're not coachable because they don't have a goal.
I would agree.
So it's a really interesting phenomenon. And like I say, it's something we're testing out at the moment as a team, but it comes from restorative justice, but it also works really well with our safety culture about no blame. There's no blame. We're just being factual about what's happened and how we're feeling, and then working out where you go from there, really.
Do you know, I think a lot of people could probably lean into a little bit more no blame. In a lot of organisations, I would like to put that up on the board and say this is where we're striving, this is what we're striving for. And I really like that peeling back the onions thing, because I think quite often we are just looking for a solution in the moment, and we're not necessarily always expressing our needs. Sometimes we don't even understand that ourselves.
No, and people don't know sometimes until they get in the room what their actual need is, and you need that space to talk. I think with coaching, I would have got there eventually, but if someone asks me the right question, I go, oh,
there it is.
That's what I needed to do. Or if I'm lying to myself, it's really important that sometimes, I know we have that cognitive dissonance, don't we? I'm a good person, I couldn't have possibly done that or made a mistake. That wasn't me, you know. And actually sometimes you need to explore that and learn, don't you?
You do. And I'm often still quite I wouldn't say surprised, but it's quite nice that people can have the humility to admit when they can't connect with things like that, or that there's things they don't understand. But quite often when I'm doing coaching or when we're working in cohorts, we use something as simple as the emotions wheel. And we talk about how granular you can get with your feelings and your emotions. And quite often that's a bit of a turning point for people, because, you know, if we go to that middle layer, like those big words like happy and angry, you know, some people, that's as far as they'll go. They won't
won't go
down the circle. And I think when I've done work, particularly with coaching, as you say, on okay, but where's that anger coming from, and what is the actual reason for you feeling like that, and therefore what's the need you have?
That's right.
I think a lot of people, it's a bit of a moment for them.
Definitely.
And we can probably apply that back to change, can't we?
Oh yeah.
And actually during that change, if people can connect, or the agile environment they're in, what is it that is making me feel uncomfortable? What is it I actually need to feel secure? We have that conversation a lot around, it's very different for everybody. You know, some people are overwhelmed as well, I think, with their emotions and their needs. So I think someone I was talking to last week was being very overwhelmed by too much information. You know, and hearing everything going on, and that was too much for them. Whereas someone else in the same team was saying to me, actually, I only want to know what I need to get through the week. Because I really am that person that just want to be very actionable. And if I'm worrying about my circle of concern too much, that's too much. And it made me really think how exhausted it must be for that leader to manage that. And kind of different type, and if you can put another 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 people in the equation, that's no mean feat for a leader. And I guess that brings me on to another question. I mean, if you were to kind of apply the principles of leadership, we can always apply, like, you know, you see all these great posters about what good leadership looks like, and that one with the manager versus the leader always frustrates me. They're two independent things. So okay, but if you had to summarize, maybe
no pressure.
For your organisation right now specifically,
okay,
what would you say good leadership looks like?
I think for me, it's good people management. It's being able to connect with your team, understand what it is that they need, and work out what you're rolling with that. And there's something that, I love the work of Professor Michael West, compassionate leader.
Yeah.
And it is something that I think everyone hears the word compassion and they think we're all running around with like unicorns and fluffy pink clouds. And that's not what compassion's about. If you look at actually what the evidence says, it's about being clear about what's expected. It's then explaining to people what it is that you expect them to do in order to help you deliver that very clearly.
Yeah.
It's being able to have great and courageous conversations, because my new thing is not calling them difficult conversations, we're either calling them courageous or important conversations.
I like that.
Because if you call it difficult, you've immediately got a hindering thought in your head.
Well, yeah, that's like the word conflict. I don't like to use the word
threat
conflict.
state stuff, isn't it? All the time. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
How do I get myself in challenge state, and how do you get yourself in challenge state?
I like that. It's a good tip for people.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So for me, there is that side of it, which I think if you ignore the people, because you've got your big strategy to write, you're at a detriment. That being said, one of the things we get feedback from staff is they absolutely want to know what it is that we're going to do. And what I would notice, if you've got a really clear sense of purpose, and we're kind of at the cusp of really getting clear on that. I know we've always got, look after the patient, don't harm anyone, don't spend money we haven't got. There is the kind of core messages that run through any hospital, trust or organisation you would go into. But I think there's something about what's important to us. And I've noticed previously in other trusts, and also in, when I've worked here, when we have that, it's just really helpful for staff because they know what's important and what to focus on. And then they start to, you can trust them, all of that type of thing. So I think getting it right for people, but at the same time being strong in our message about what's important, and getting it. And I see that beginning to happen. And I feel quite excited about that. We've got our group strategy framework. We're currently writing our people strategy at the moment.
That's exciting.
So we're kind of in that place. I'm in that terrible completer finisher, not a natural completer finisher, where I'm so close.
Yes.
So if you would like me to do anything, I'm in that full procrastination zone where I'll be operationally so efficient on everything, but finalising that actual document. It's my preference though, because I want to move on to the delivery now. So I'm kind of bored. I know what I want to do. I just want to move into the delivery plan now. Yeah, but I suppose that's a good example, isn't it? That's my preference. But at the same time, I have to be an adult, extreme adulting.
Yes.
I have to choose to get this in because it's got to go through committee. It's got to go through governance. So I think it's, I think for me, it's a people and kind of a sense of purpose. And then I suppose the other thing that I've learned is that use your governance for good. You need structure. And we are masters at governance and bureaucracy in the public sector. But actually, for me, what I've noticed is you can use it to give a really clear sense of purpose. You've got a really great set of terms of reference. Like you're basically coaching, aren't you? You're setting your goal. Yeah. So, part of me wants to... Yeah, clear expectations. Part of me wants to rally against governance. But actually, if you can use it to get decisions made which give you permission to act and so you can crack on, I think... so I think a lot of managers or leaders get really stuck because they don't feel they've got permission to act. But I do think there's ways of you can go out and get your permission to act. So I think that's going to be the biggest...
It's a skill for people.
It's a skill. It is, and I think that will be, if we really start to see that exponentially being cracked in our group, nothing's going to stop us, and that would be. And I see it already as people settle in and they've worked out how to get into their office at Hull Royal because they used to work at Grimsby. Do you know what I mean? So they know they've got their pass. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. And you know where to park now, and all of that sort of stuff. So that kind of hygiene issue. So I think that is it. And I think finally as well, don't forget those hygiene issues. You can't expect people to be in self-actualization mode if they haven't got a chair, they don't know how to log on, they don't know how to do all of that sort of stuff. So I think, I've brought myself full circle back down to that good old school, be a good line manager, because people leave managers usually, not organisations, in my experience.
Well, I can definitely connect with that, being someone who has made that decision a couple of times in my career. But I like that because I think quite often, if we're in a high performing organisation, we do kind of maybe forget to sweat the small stuff sometimes. That's like your office, your chair, your IT, the fact that you can go make a coffee somewhere, and actually those things do just have they have the ability to make you feel self-actualized if just done right. You can have the toughest week ever and those small things can make a difference, or they can break you because, so many other things are building up and then all of a sudden there's no chair for you, and I think I've seen that happen in a lot of organisations. So, yeah, and I guess what you were covering off there was both leadership and management to a degree.
I don't think they're separate.
No.
Even if you don't have direct managers, direct line reports as an example, say you're a programme manager, have you got their buy-in? You might have the swankiest goal and action plan in the entire world, but do people know what you want? Are they on board with it? And are you personally taking responsibility for that? Because I think that, everyone gets, they didn't want to do it, they didn't like it, but well, do you need to change the goal then? Do you, what else do you need to do?
Yeah.
What other resources might you need? Kind of, that kind of self-coaching. And I think, the key to some of this stuff is people taking responsibility for themselves and understanding their impact and what can I do differently. Because I joke that I should have been sat years ago, really, because I'm absolutely under not a complete finisher. I'm like, oh, squirrel, what's that?
But that's part of your charm, Lucy.
It is, and hence the joy of the tangents that we've just been on. But that is a preference, not a skill.
Yeah, of course.
So I have to choose to do it. I have to choose to do my accounts correctly. And I do think that it's about understanding yourself and being really clear. One of the things that I absolutely love is the work of Donald Clifton. Go look him up. He's like the father of positive psychology. Worked for the Gallup organisation for years. There's a really amazing book called First Break All the Rules. I highly recommend it. It changed me as a leader. It changed my perspective on organisational development. And I mean that with a capital O and a D rather than the team.
Yeah.
And just this concept of this, it's an oldie but a goldie, isn't it? Maslow's hierarchy of need. But actually you do need to make sure that people understand that. And another book he wrote, which was How Full Is Your Bucket as well, that talks about the power of engagement, the power of negativity and how that can impact. And it's just really stuck with me around, do you know what? I might be a bit rubbish at detail, but I'm super logical, so I'm going to leverage that instead. And then we were chatting about AI, weren't we, earlier as well?
I love a bit of it.
Thank you.
Good.
Co-pilot who genuinely often saves my grammatical life and UK spelling world, but it's there are tools out there that can allow you to be better, but you don't have to change who you are. You just have to take responsibility for who you are, and I think that's really important.
I like that, and I think a lot of what you were saying there kind of leans into some of the conversations we've been having recently, because I know you've gone through your attributes as well, and leaning into
cunning.
I
enjoyed that.
Did you have high cunning? I can't remember.
I think it was in my top 10. I was like,
I would not be surprised.
I immediately obviously went to Blackadder and Baldrick, and I have a cunning plan. Of course.
But you're absolutely right. I think it's about leveraging what we know is within us, but also taking responsibility, because what we say when we're talking about our attributes is the high and the low. There's no right and wrong. It's about how you leverage them within your role or what you want to achieve. And I guess, if you're super high in accountability like myself, that's definitely going to be positive, but it's also going to trip me up from time to time.
Absolutely.
And, I'm not great at compartmentalising, same as you. I'm so used to task switching. I have to force myself into that.
Yeah.
But ultimately, there's a time and a place within your role to do that. And I think that's a fabulous thing to sort of consider is, what people can actually take responsibility for, that they know where they're working in their genius. And this is the other thing that I kind of always sort of link back to is you can feel in your system, in your body, if you've not been working in your genius enough. So for you, if you're stuck doing those accounts and all those things that you're not so keen on for a long period of time, your body language, your like cognitive ability to a degree just changes. And I think I always say to people, if you can kind of check in with yourself at the end of the week and say, where am I? Like, have I been working in my... You can definitely make that connection between feeling drained and feeling energized.
Definitely.
I think it's something for people to recognize, isn't it? But I also like what you said there about innovation and how, some of the stuff that you can get out there to help you be better. Let's embrace it and use it in the right way. And I was working with some of your team a few weeks ago, and they were saying, look, we're going to have this meeting, but we're going to have to jump off because we're going to go on to a hackathon.
That's right, we've had a hackathon.
And I was like,
exciting.
this sounds really good fun.
Yeah.
What is going on? So there's obviously some innovation going on, as always.
Yeah.
Tell me about that, because it sounded super interesting.
Initially, I thought like it was going to be like the Matrix and Keanu was going to be there, but no, it didn't turn out to be that.
No.
Obviously, our digital director Andy has been doing some amazing work connecting with Microsoft. So we've got a trial with Microsoft's AI, which is called Copilot.
Okay.
And so what we were doing as well was looking at how we could solve problems in the organisation. So we kind of split off. And one kind of group of people went off to create power apps.
Okay.
So these are apps that we could create to solve problems that we've got internally. And this is brilliant. Does that make sense? And it's everything from, could we get everyone to like be able to book events centrally on an app? You know, the joy of like, can I book a room must be the same in every organisation.
Oh, yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, can I find a room?
Sounds simple, but it really
but
isn't.
it really isn't.
Yeah.
Right through to can we solve clinical problems? What's really interesting about Copilot, it does everything. I mean, for me personally, like I can go in and put a prompt into Copilot and it'll go, I can ask it, what has my boss asked me to do over the last 2 weeks on my emails, and it'll go away and it'll create me a little action plan.
Love that.
So for somebody who needs to focus and doesn't need to miss the audit, for an example, it's really, really helpful. I've been writing a strategy, so I've been getting it to check. Sometimes you can probably tell I can be quite wordy, so I've been it's been helping me to become impactful or to rewrite something, or if I've written a big piece, can you summarize that for me? So, so I can put that in the executive summary. And of course you have to go in and you change it and and all that sort of stuff, but it's literally shaved like hours and hours off my day. So that is at a very basic level. But then the hackathon was also exploring, could we, set up prompts? Could it do regular stuff? So we had clinical teams there. There were kind of corporate business teams. Yeah, so basically the hackathon was designed for us to think about, can we use it? We're testing out all these uses of Copilot. We were thinking about, in our team, we have a reporting tool that staff are allowed to report if discrimination's happened.
Okay.
And at the moment, we would have to go through that and look at theme it ourselves and work out if there are any hotspots that we need to go in. And Copilot could probably do that really quickly, whereas that might take one of our equality, diversity, inclusion managers a couple of days. And actually, they also spend a lot of time supporting staff as well. So that's just took 2 days away from them. So I think it's everything from that. I think obviously everyone's worried about like confidentiality, and
of course,
I don't think, so I think, we haven't been, shoving a load of patient data into it or anything like that. But I think, there are so many amazing things on the horizon. And I think it can be really inclusive as well, because it can really kind of level things up. Do you know what I mean? Because like, if you're dyslexic, rather than you stressing about, did you write, just get Copilot to check it.
And this has got to be a big part of your team's job, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
About leveling the playing field for people.
Absolutely. And I think it's that acceptance. And if you don't accept it, have a think about it, that we do have people who have a different starting point to us. And as a white woman who's come through quite a traditional education route, because I was able to, but I come from a single parent family as well, so I've got other things. Saying you're privileged is not saying you're privileged and better than everybody else. It's not negating that you've maybe had challenges in your life, but different levels of privilege exist. If you don't have a disability, one of our staff networks, I tell you what, finding a night out, I'd never even thought about where I go to the toilet before. But can we go out, and is the venue accessible?
Sure.
If privilege is like air, you don't notice it until it's missing.
I think that's a really good thing to land on, actually.
Yeah. And if you think about us, not that I'm, I've got a special birthday this year, haven't I? Aging 21. That's right. Thanks so much. I appreciate it. And I think from that point of view, I'm deaf. I wear a hearing aid. And, I've experienced things that have been challenging. There are certain rooms I can't hear in. People get fed up of repeating themselves. So there are things that I miss out on as a result of that. But then I do have white privilege as a white woman. Do you know what I mean? I don't experience any discrimination as a straight, white woman. So on that level. So I think it's just understanding what that is and And this is what we mean by that. It's, you know, and I think these personal mastery courses have been great because we're weird. If you're culturally British, you know, we like to queue, you know,
and moan about it at the same time,
and worry about it at the same time, you know, and get a bit passive aggressive if someone like even looks like they're gonna like get in front of us or anything like that, you know. But actually, imagine if that's new. We have a lot of internationally educated staff, and the NHS would grind to a halt without them. And actually coming into that organisation and explaining how things work, the bureaucracy, how your career progresses, often very different maybe from someone's home country.
Cultural variation.
Yeah, cultural variation.
We've worked with a lot of those groups as well, haven't we? Yeah. We all fight over the Filipino nurses that come through, as in not in a bad way. That we want to work with them because they're so lovely, the nicest people,
and really experienced. I think some of the challenges is to make sure that staff realise that they're new to the NHS and new to Hull, as an example, or new to Grimsby. That's different from being new to nursing or being new to medicine or new to physio.
New to Hull and new to Vere, even those are different things. The Hullisms.
We were laughing. Do you know? I'm going to give you a question back now. Look, I'm going to revenge it.
I wasn't ready for this.
So I'm from Nottingham. Okay. So do you know what tabs are? Anyone from the Midlands, you'll know what tabs are.
I'm going to guess cigarettes.
They're not. They're your ears.
Oh, and why is that?
Just the little tabs on the side of your head, aren't you?
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
No, I definitely did not know that.
And we were laughing with some of our new resident doctors coming in on a new rotation from, you know, internationally educated medical graduates. You know, but what if someone says to you, this is a very Hull thing, I'm off my legs, doctor. What does off your legs? Did you put them to one side? What they mean is they've fallen over. Yeah. You know what I mean? So imagine, you know, you've probably learned, you know, classic, I don't know, you know, RP English if you've been learning it, or maybe you've learned American English. And this, you know, little old lady comes in and tells you that they're off their legs. And you'd be like, what? Or like, my tabs are hurting, doctor. Or I up my duck. You know, that's another Nottingham thing. That means hello, does it? Does it?
Such a variation.
Such a variation. So I think, you know, but then actually, how do you really value the diversity that's coming in? Because, you know, a lot of these staff have worked all over the world. They're coming here because they know it's a brilliant place, that they're going to enrich our communities. And I think
to be embraced, isn't it?
To be embraced, absolutely.
But it's also to be, and I think what's lovely about it is you guys have acknowledged some of the things by just moving to a whole new country, a whole new city, some of the variations in just our cultural kind of expectations, our values, our language, all those things. And this is something we're doing a lot of work here on at the moment with international companies around cultural variations and the 8 dimensions of culture. And I think we're finding that quite fascinating, actually, just learning about in one country how different, you know, dialects can be so different. So I think, for me, I think it's lovely that you guys have already established the fact that, you know, just as part of that settling in process, it's big enough that you've had to leave your country and come here and pick up this whole new career.
That's right.
But then you get this whole new culture of people in Hull. And P.S. we are a fabulous bunch of people in Hull, on the Hull, but also we have some quirky ways. And I think it's important to recognise that. And it's just nice to be able to feel people feel supported during that.
Without a doubt. So I think it is thinking about it's that, what is that positive action you can do? And there's a really old picture, and it's you know, to talk about equality, diversity, and also particularly equity.
Yeah.
And it's just 3 little boys or 3 children stood on boxes, and they're all different heights, and they're all stood on the same size box with a fence in front of them. And if you give all of the kids the same size box, one of them can't see. I think often the default for leaders or managers is, well, if I just treat everybody the same, it'll be fine.
Absolutely.
But actually, it's understanding that if you treat everybody the same, you might possibly be discriminating. You know, obviously, the next step is that you might make adjustments, whether that be flexible working, a different induction because somebody needs to, you know, assimilate with a new city or a new country, all of those different things. But actually, obviously, true equity is not needing to put any adjustments in at all, so that actually it's just easy for you to navigate the world. There are no barriers. But I think the first step is to recognise it is harder if you are a black woman to progress in the NHS. It is harder.
Statistics show
that, you know, in terms of that, just generally we know from a women's point of view, we're not too bad from a, you know, because we have a very set structure. I think one of the good things in the public sector is our pay structure sometimes. So, if you are on a certain banding and you're a man and you're a certain banding as a woman, you will get the same pay. I suppose that maybe the imbalance is how you got there.
Sure.
And what does that representation look like in terms of that? And that is the biggest challenge, I think, for the NHS, is to see our staff groups, both from a male-female perspective and also from, all of our different communities represented at that very senior level. And that's not just local to us. That is definitely a national issue, because diversity matters. Because if you have the same people making the same decisions, you'll get exactly the same outcomes.
Totally.
What is it? The definition of insanity, isn't it? You keep doing what you've always done, you'll always get what you've always got. Yeah, absolutely.
I've got one big final question for you. So how are you and your team thinking about preparing your workforce for future challenges? So we're thinking about things like the aging population, which we're talking about a lot, the emerging technologies that we were just talking about, and the increasing complexity of healthcare, because there's so many things, so many variations and complexities now. Even if it's just one thing that you can think of that is forefront of your mind for you, your team, and the people that you work with, what are you thinking? What's the forward planning that's kind of going through your mind or your team's mind for preparing for success?
This is going to sound proper kind of business psychology, but I'm going to talk about psychological safety and trust.
Okay.
I think that if we do not get that right, we're going to struggle. Because if you don't have that, and you don't have trust, and you don't have psychological safety, it's what I would notice the most in terms of teams having that challenge. And so for me, being able to trust your team, not feel like your values are being messed with on a daily basis, and to know that people have kind of got your back, it kind of gives you permission to be innovative, to take risks, all of those things. But it even connects into how we learn, how we understand our safety challenges, how we innovate from that. Because I think, while medicine is a science, it's also an element of art and decision making, and it's never cut and dried. Things are developing all the time. So I think for me that is something that I would notice is actually, if we can get that right, and we can get people feeling as safe as they possibly can at work, feel they can share their ideas, feel they can innovate, we're probably going to be all right, because we need those risk-taking babies. We need that innovation. We need someone to feel safe. I'm not sure that's working.
Yeah. Could we intelligent failure?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So, I mean, it's probably not some big technological advance, but I just feel like we could hit the target and miss the point if we don't understand that essentially we are a people business run by people for people.
I love that, and it ends on a lovely note for me, because that's one of the key things we like to talk about here at T2. Yeah. So if you can get that right, it essentially underpins everything else, and means that, people are more forgiving, people are more understanding, it's more innovation. Yeah. And for me, I think that's a fantastic thing to leave the podcast with. So thank you so much. I've really enjoyed this chat, as I always do.
Be nice. You know what tabs are now?
I do.
And as does everyone who listens to the podcast.
We call them lugs in Aberdeen, just for anyone who's interested. Nice. And we will look forward to seeing you again shortly. And we will see you again soon for another People Performance podcast.